Hi, it's Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and today we're talking about workload automation, in particular for the hybrid cloud. We have a special guest. It's Tom Murphy from TurboNama, Chief Marketing Officer. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So, a lot has changed, obviously, in computing and in the cloud, and certainly what TurboNama is bringing to the table is something very, very cutting edge and quite frankly being very well received. But before we get kind of down into the tall grass, I'd like to talk about the tops of the trees, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And that is particularly about automation in the IT space. I mean, that's the movement, the larger movement, I think, that you guys are approaching. Can you talk a little bit about where that's headed and what's driving that?
Sure. So organizations that we work with, customers we work with, are telling us that the scale and complexity of today's IT environments is growing exponentially. Because of that exponential growth, it creates, really, they guess at a lot of the decisions they're trying to make, and they need clarity, and they need real-time information to make sure the environment is always performing, it's always cost-effective, and they're always compliant. So when we think about IT and automation, in reality, what we're really saying is we need to go beyond human scale, we need to provide the consistency that IT needs, and deliver on service levels within the organization.
So this is really virtualization that we're talking about in terms of what TurboNama is trying to get at.
Yeah, virtualization is where we started as a company, and virtualization for us, what it did is it created a layer of abstraction on top of a physical infrastructure that created a software-defined world. That software-defined world allowed real-time changes to the environment to accommodate the changes that are taking place from a demand perspective. So when we think about virtualization, it was just really the first step in cloud and also cloud native. Those environments are just extensions of virtualization. And for us, we take the same approach that we have within virtualization and we apply it to the cloud and we apply it to cloud native as well for microservices.
Well, and in specific cloud management, right?
Sure.
And that's really where you get the value of the technology.
Sure. In cloud management, what we're seeing with customers is when they deploy to the cloud, it's a lot of, again, guesswork going into the cloud. They don't know the size of the resources, the instances, or the templates they need when they get to the cloud. And a lot of times they end up with bills that are 3x what they expect, and it's thousands of lines they have to dissect. So we're giving the clarity on if they move to the cloud, what's the best cloud provider to provide the service they need? What's the cost they expect? What's the performance they expect? What's the size of the templates they need? So we're answering a lot of complex questions for customers moving to the cloud, and we're using a lot of historical information from on-prem to help them make that transition, that digital transformation into the cloud as well.
Well, and that's really the challenge for an organization, isn't it? That you not only have to select the cloud you're interested in being on, but then how you're going to or multiple clouds, right? And then how are you going to manage it? And that's really where you step in.
Yeah, I mean, organizations that have an on-prem team working with virtualization, a lot of times they try to transition that team to support cloud as well the best they can. Providing a consistent approach to management across on-prem and cloud, and then to go from AWS to Azure and a consistent approach there, think about the benefit that provides to IT who's trying to scale, not add additional people, but try to reprogram their staff to support the different business initiatives. So whether it's on-prem, cloud, AWS, Azure, it's really important for them to have a hybrid approach to managing across the diverse environments.
So there's a lot of major cloud providers, and there's obviously a business case for moving to the cloud. What's the business case for moving to a cloud management solution that can really handle all of that?
Sure. When organizations move to the cloud, it's, again, as we said, it's a complex decision they have to really decide on. A lot of it's guesswork. One of the justifications for just looking at cloud management is, first is assuring performance of the applications when you get there. One of the things that organizations do when they make the decision is they over-provision. If you were a developer, if I was a developer, and I didn't have education on what I need, what am I going to do? I will over-provision to make sure that I can deliver the performance that the end user needs. So that's a safe way to do it, but it's not a responsible way to do it. What we're saying is, let's be responsible about how we get to the cloud, let's do it in a cost-effective way, and let's deliver the performance you need. So cloud management, or the ability to manage in the cloud, gives you the right performance at the lowest cost and always compliant with business policies.
Well, so TurboNama is really growing rapidly. I know you've got bunch of employees down the street in Boston.
We do.
What are clients really asking for, and more specifically, what are clients looking like for you? What are the kind of early adopters and the strongest clients you have?
Sure. So clients, when they come to us, are really focused on 5 core things. The first is they're looking to consolidate data centers. That's one. So they want answers to, when I bring these together, how could I do that in an effective way without compromising performance, but get the best density within the environment? The second is they're doing refreshes. They're actually saying, it's a 3-year cycle for hardware. I'm bringing new hardware in. What should I use to accommodate my growing workloads? Where can I have a safe, what's the investment I should make to make sure I deliver on the performance I need, but the lowest cost? So we're right-sizing the environment for them. The third is, one of the biggest questions CIOs have is, where should I run my workloads? On-prem, in the cloud. We're giving them the clarity to make a decision as to whether it should be stay on-prem or move to the cloud. So that's the third use case. Yep.
Well, so before you go down, sorry to interrupt, but that seems to be a fairly big decision at this point.
Absolutely.
On-prem or in the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when you look at the characteristics of the workloads that actually run, what we look at is we see that there's, let's say, high volatility. When there's high volatility, that creates the uncertainty. If something's very steady, it's pretty easy to predict or what's going to run. So we see high volatility, we see large scale, we see that software defined on top of, it creates that abstraction that creates complexity that organizations struggle with to understand how it's going to run in the cloud. So we bring that clarity back to the decision as to what cloud provider would work best and what's the performance and cost going to look like when they get there.
And I apologize, you had a couple of more you wanted to get to.
Yeah. So the cloud migration is a big question for CIOs. The other is, once they're in the cloud, how do we optimize the cost of performance once they're there? Because getting there, a lot of times, the initiative to get to the cloud comes from DevOps, right? It comes from shadow IT. They start something up in the cloud that eventually someone else might inherit. How do I, again, deliver the best performance in the cloud, but maintain and lower the cost so I don't have that 3x that we talked about earlier? The last is, interesting concept that we heard from a CIO, is the number one metric that CIOs should be measured by is the amount of priority and focus they put on innovation versus operations. Most organizations today, what they focus on is keeping the lights on. 80% of staff are actually looking at keeping lights on. So that's, think about 80% of your budget, 80% of your people focused on keeping the lights on. What if you could shift that to 50-50? Think about the impact of taking budget and people and focusing that on innovation and advancing business initiatives within the company. So one of the things we're doing is helping people shift that innovation to the innovation from operations by automating the environment, automating the management of the environment.
Well, and it makes them more nimble as well, right?
Absolutely.
They're able to do a lot more with a lot less in this new hybrid environment.
Yeah, and it's not just the trade-off, it's actually do it a lot better because you have automation making the decisions on behalf of humans because it's gotten so complex. So it isn't just a fair trade-off, it's the environment's gotten healthier, we're focused on better performance, lower cost, and we're allowing the people to focus on the highest priority business initiatives.
Well, and so with regard to TurboNama and automation, it's really a very scenario-based. I mean, you guys are really doing modeling and you're doing all kinds of testing, and the way TurboNama works is quite unique.
Yeah. So the way it works is we go in an agentless environment, we take information from the environment, and we now have a perspective, let's call it a perspective of a real-time running environment. Once we do that, we can actually model, but we're also taking information from the real-time environment, and we're also automating the optimization of the environment in real time. So the modeling is just one aspect to help people answer tough questions like, when I get to the cloud, what should I do? But in reality, the real value of TurboNama comes from the real-time intelligence we're gathering. We create what we call smart workloads. Smart meaning self-managing and real-time. That means that the workloads decide where they want to run, they decide when they should start and stop, and they decide how big they should be, the resources they need by themselves. And that delivers on the best performance at the lowest cost while always being compliant. So that is really the true value of TurboNama. Is the modeling is just a point-in-time decision, but the true value is the ongoing performance, the ongoing cost minimization, and ultimately always being compliant, maintaining that steady state of health versus chasing alerts or chasing bad situations.
Now, how do you guys break into an organization? How do you get kind of a foothold? I got to believe that it's a little bit of the Wild West these days in some of these organizations in terms of their cloud environments kind of springing up organically, and then it's almost like a wrestling match to try to get a handle on what innovation is happening down at
Sure.
down the levels.
Sure. Well, what we do is we look for organizations going through a form of IT transformation. That means a lot of different things, right? But some of the things we look for is data center consolidation. We look for the refresh projects. We look for cloud migration. When we see those, we know there's risk in making that transformation. And when we bring the clarity as to a safe way to make that transition, not just the point in time, but ongoing, how do you assure performance? Those are the organizations that we intersect during that transition and provide the most value, because there's high risk when they make the transformation through the IT transformation.
So do you tend to get them at that more strategic kind of implementation level, or do you get them, like I said, when they're a little more scattered and trying to get a handle on things?
Definitely at the transformation. When they're going through the transformation, the strategic level, these are significant projects. Companies are betting on the organization to make some type of substantial change. With that comes a risk. And when that risk is introduced, that's the opportunity for us to add the most value to the organization when there's change.
So what would hold back a company from moving toward a cloud management solution, or just moving toward a hybrid cloud approach?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I actually worked in IT for a number of years, so I can kind of put myself into the shoes of an IT person. And when I focused on transforming an organization or installing software, new servers, my main focus was just get it working. So sometimes in organizations that we work with, get it working means get it up and running at no matter what cost. Eventually, that cost catches up. So the organizations that might say, not right now for us, ultimately we find that they will try to make the transition, and when they get there, it is more expensive, or it maybe doesn't deliver on the performance they expected, and that's when we have to come in afterwards to help them out. But that's a scenario where we know it's just a matter of time before we get a call back from one of the organizations that tell us to hold off for a bit.
So now, I know you're competing with some very large providers out there. It's a very dynamic space. Where are you guys finding differentiators that really kind of move the needle?
Sure. So I mentioned the word workload earlier, right? So the workload, we call them smart workloads. By focusing on the workload and not the infrastructure, we're focusing on what really the end user needs. The end user runs applications which run on top of workloads, which uses infrastructure to support those workloads. By focusing on the workload, we're actually providing the workloads, as I called it earlier, smart, self-managing in real time. They're getting the resources they need at the time they need them, in the priority they need, and actually what it does is it keeps the environment healthy. We're not setting up thresholds, we're not setting up alerts, we're constantly looking for ways of making improvements, and by doing that, what happens is it keeps the environment healthy at all times versus creating information that IT needs to digest and then take action on, which usually ends up being a lot later than the event. So therefore, they're making guesses on what they should do. But think about keeping the environment in a healthy state at all times. That's where we add the most value.
So where do you think we are right now in kind of the adoption curve? I mean, it seems like it's fairly early on, but
Yeah.
you guys are certainly in the thick of it. Where do you see? Is it the Fortune 2000? Is it where is it kind of rolling? Is it vertical based? Where are we?
Sure. So we think of it as waves of opportunity in our company. So the first wave was virtualization. And virtualization created that software-defined world where we could come in and be a AI-powered decision engine that allowed us to make decisions about how to optimize the environment to deliver the best performance at the lowest cost. So that was virtualization. Now with the cloud movement, it creates the risk and uncertainty again. So now we go to cloud, we take the exact same approach we took for virtualization and apply it to cloud. So there's a second wave of opportunity for the company. So when you said we're early to in reality, the virtualization space has been around for a while. So we're 2,000 customers running in virtualization. That market is not new for us, right? But the second wave of cloud, and then cloud native, the same thing. It's going to be exponentially more complex. We're going to need automation to get through that. And that ultimately, again, that gives us waves of opportunities. And with 2,000 customers, Fortune 100 of the Fortune 500 are customers. There's not necessarily a vertical. We do see a strong financial services and healthcare, penetration, but ultimately for us, anyone that virtualizes is a customer, potential customer. Anyone who has a cloud is a customer for us as well.
So as you just raised another large chunk of money. I know you guys have raised a lot of money. What are you thinking of as you're going forward? What's kind of next on the roadmap?
Yep. And back to the wave discussion, right? So virtualization, we've got a lot of high-profile customers in virtualization, cloud. Same, it's a tremendous market opportunity. There's companies out there, we call them the Cloud X's internally, that are focused just on cloud. We've got a virtualization opportunity, we've got a cloud opportunity, we've got cloud native. And if you look at historically, 2017, 1 out of every 5 workloads, 20% actually ran on-prem, in the cloud. Fast forward to 2020, actually 50-50, so half the workloads running in cloud. And think about the opportunity ahead of us if we can use that virtualization as a springboard into the cloud business, because everyone's going from virtualized environments to cloud. So we have a benefit there. We're not just a cloud provider or a cloud management platform. We have the view of on-prem. We use that to help them size getting to the cloud, and then we'll do the same thing for cloud native as well. So our future is virtualization over to cloud native.
Tom, this has been great. Thanks very much for coming by and sharing the insights. We would certainly encourage you to go to turbonomic.com and check out more about the cloud management solution that they offer, as well as going to Solutions Review and our cloud platform site, where we cover not only cloud platforms, but cloud management solutions and more about workload automation. Thanks very much again.
Thanks, Doug.